final portion of today's networking event, and that is our CVEB Best Practices panel. At least that's the name, that's what I called it. But what I want it to be is dialogue between the boards, so you can discuss your best practices, but also if there are challenges or any issues where maybe you need to hear from a peer, one of our seasoned boards, to find out how they overcame that challenge. We definitely want to hear from you at this time. If you have, for the sake of simplifying this portion, or to make it a little less confusing, you may please submit your comments or questions in the chat box, and then that way we won't have multiple individuals speaking at the same time. The exception, of course, being we have Cleveland via video because their CVEBs are there and they've agreed to share best practices. I also have Wisconsin joining us as well, so we may throw some questions out at them as well. But to start, by way of introduction, I want to introduce 3 individuals who have agreed to serve on today's panel. And again, when I say panel, I'm using the term loosely. It's more of a discussion. But by way of introduction, they all 3 are affiliated with the Community Veteran Engagement Board. I have Jennifer Coleman. She is the advisor and former co-chair of the Duluth CVEB. Their official name is the North Star ISFAC, but they also operate in collaboration with the Duluth Beyond the Yellow Ribbon. I also have Anita Herring. Am I pronouncing your last name correctly? She is the co-chair of the St. Cloud CVEB. Their official name is Warriors to Citizens Initiative. And I have Bill Wagner, who is one of the co-chairs of the St. Paul CVEB, and their official name is St. Paul Beyond the Yellow Ribbon. So I want to open the floor at this time. If any questions come in, definitely throw them out there. But first I want to open the floor to those who are in attendance here in Bloomington. I'm happy to see so many faces here today. Are there any questions or anything you want to say to start? Yes.
Hi, Tiffany Kovaleski. I have a couple of hats here today. The first one I'm going to put on is my Building Healthy Military Communities hat. I am one of 7 state coordinators throughout the country, and I see the connection with CVEBs with my other colleagues to be something that could be a really beautiful partnership. They don't have the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon program that we have here in the state of Minnesota, and I feel like they could maximize their efforts by building these communities together alongside the CVEBs. I think some of the same struggles and same accomplishments could come from both of them. So I think that's very exciting, and I know that Gil Stubbs had reached out to me once on the onset, so I'm hoping that we can connect the other CVEBs in the other states, so maybe Gil can reach out and we can make sure that that's actually happening. But then when I put on my other...
Let me put in a plug, just to clarify for those who may not know, Gil Stubbs is with the Veteran Experience Office, and part of his area of responsibility includes Minnesota. So if you're in an area and you're not sure who your VEO point of contact is, that website that we referenced earlier, that was referenced by Deputy Chris Olson, it does have a link to the CVEB map. It shows you our current CVEBs, as well as there's another link that will take you to your VEO POC. But if you have any issues finding the information, definitely shoot me an email, veronica.jackson-patrick@va.gov. So thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn it back over to you.
So then putting on my other hat, there's a few challenges that I would like to overcome with CVEBs when it comes to my hat with Beyond the Yellow Ribbon communities here within the state of Minnesota. And knowing that we have the 3 people here that are representing the CVEBs, I still think that there is a disconnect with what the CVEBs are actually doing within the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon communities, and there is a lack of communication between them and the local VA community. And they can speak more to it if I'm off. But how do we get those CVEBs to join in with our Beyond the Yellow Ribbon communities? Because I think it would be a great asset to have them, but at the same time, what are their roles and how are they willing to partner? Because we've really found, and we're trying to go through a strengthening initiative ourselves right now. You can't just say that it is and put it out there and expect the communities to solve these problems. We need to be alongside them and helping them along the way as the state now, with Beyond the Yellow Ribbon, to say, here are some of the things that we would like to sit at the table with you for. I hope that I'm being clear in what I'm asking for, but we want to partner, but it just doesn't seem like there's a clear role as to how it's working.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is better collaboration between the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon group as well as with the CVEB. And in some instances, they serve a dual purpose, or at least have both designations. The difference with the CVEB, and again, some of the information I'm just putting out there for those who may not be, who may not have all of this information. In order to have the CVEB designation, the primary difference is that means that VA has a seat at the table with that board. In some areas, when this initiative was originally set up, going back to Chris Olson, our deputy's presentation, in some areas, VA joined existing boards. The boards were already there. They were doing great things. They'll be there probably long after the VA. So kudos to them, but they embraced the VA, invited them to have a seat at the table. In other areas, there was a gap there. There were groups that either maybe weren't collaborating as effectively, or maybe in some areas it was non-existent. And so the Veterans Experience Office was able to work with those local facilities to establish new boards. So both avenues, if you will, have seen success. But we do acknowledge that there are certain groups like Beyond the Yellow Ribbon and other organizations that are active and doing great things. And so what I'm hearing is how can we better collaborate,
yeah.
Partner those two together.
Like with NBI, we're in discussion with Deidre right now and looking forward to the new chair coming on board and kind of giving her a little bit of time. But we definitely don't want to, we want to be the backbone structure, but we don't want to feel as though that we are the only be-all, that's it. So we want to be arms open and all-encompassed because we are about collective energy and collective impact. But in order to do that, there needs to be a little bit more communication on how we can effectively work with these CVEBs and how we can better help one another.
That's a good question, and I'm glad I have the individuals in the room that I have. So they actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe all three of your boards have the CVEB designation and also either have Beyond the Yellow Ribbon designation or you have some of the same members that are a member of Beyond the Yellow Ribbon at the table during their CVEB meetings. Is that correct?
Go ahead. Do you want me to move forward? I can just speak about our Beyond the Yellow Ribbon in central Minnesota is comprised of 9 cities. And we are the Central Minnesota Warrior to Citizens that Veronica spoke of. And we have had VA representation at our table for years. And then my understanding is when they were invited to look at developing another or CVEB board, they actually at our table said that what we were or are doing is so much of what the board was also doing, so why reinvent something else as well? And there was maybe not as much clarity amongst all the VA representatives and stuff as far as what a CVEB was or is to be and such. So in our instance with our Beyond the Yellow Ribbon, we have the various committees from business, education, education and youth providers, government, faith-based, public safety and judicial, our veterans organizations and social service. And so I believe if I saw the list correctly just a few minutes ago on the CVEB PowerPoint, they were some of those same committees and such. So And that's what makes us work. The committees there, maybe not all running at one time, sometimes they are, and we do, revamp them as people come and go from their positions and such. But we have, besides, I should say with the VA at our monthly meetings that are 90 minutes, they have at least maybe 5 to 6 to 8 people, depending on how many come just from the VA. So they are very well represented and really intertwined. And I see you shaking your head too with us, and it's a great collaboration. And so they'll have a social worker there, or someone working on or in the area of workforce. We went from 1 to 3 people now coming to our meetings on suicide awareness, because we try to promote that hashtag Be There and really work with our communities within the 9 cities and beyond on the suicide awareness. Someone from the homeless, and so we work with them in various capacities. So for instance, if one of the VA social workers has someone that is was homeless, now is their HUD-BASH, is going into a working assignment, they may need bus money or transportation or car, or so we use our resources from the community along with the VAs, and they have a volunteerism program there too, and she has been able to come to our meetings a couple times. But then we're all volunteers, our whole Beyond Yellow Ribbon. So also, I was just going to make the comment that we try to pull together all of our resources all the time, besides, if they need, if it's finances or bus cards or things that they may need, the service members or veterans in their home around electrical or gas or whatever those needs are, but also resources for the service providers. And I believe it was just Jim had mentioned too, or maybe it was a person before, about the military resources and that from Purdue. And the University of Minnesota Extension also has a military reach lab, which now has gone over to Purdue, but they have a lot of resources there. In my position, I work for the University of Minnesota Extension, but I'm under a cooperative agreement with the Department of Defense. And so we have the Military Families Learning Network, which is online resources, webinars, free, 24/7, to help military service providers. And like I said, they're free. So we try to gather all of that together from our jobs that we have to our other resources in the community, and just the wealth of knowledge of the VA. And I think as the new people have been joining from the VA too, they're getting a sense of what we do in our structure and how we can move together collaboratively. Where I think before they weren't quite sure of that process. So, thank you.
You have something to add, Bill, regarding the collaboration?
Sure.
Yellow Ribbon and CVEB?
Sure. So we initially formed as a Yellow Ribbon Network under the program guidelines of the state of Minnesota's Yellow Ribbon Network approach, and we're contacted by the VA to participate, and we're more than happy. We want participation from every element of our community. So we have had consistent representation on our Yellow Ribbon Network, which we're happy to also have designated as a CVEB for a couple of years. It has ebbed and flowed a little bit over time with different people, but I think the reason and the purpose and why the VA employees are there, they could use some clear and consistent communication of how to engage and participate, actually. And just recently we've gotten an example or an experience, and I can maybe turn this into a little bit of a best practice. We are partnering with a organization that puts on a music festival every Thursday night in downtown St. Paul, And we are the fiscal agent because the Yellow Ribbon Network, or CVEB, is a 501c3. And they needed a mechanism to be able to track funding or track donations and track payment for artists and whatnot, and to actually acquire a city grant. So we stepped in to do that. And now we also said, well, we will provide volunteers to man a tent that communicates military and veteran appreciation. So military and veteran families can come and say hi, introduce themselves, ask about what it is we are doing. We also are sharing with the entire community what our Yellow Ribbon Network / CVEB is and how they could volunteer or participate. A couple things that we have challenges with when a state or federal employee wants to bring back opportunities to volunteer to their organizations, everybody gets real tight. Okay? So I think there's an opportunity for a discussion to be had about if you want to communicate things that are going on and participate as a volunteer in your community, there might be some value in saying you're not an official representative of the VA or the state at that point in time, because you're volunteering on your own time. Now, you might be employed by them, but you're free of whatever things you might need to be concerned about being free of. So that would be just one thing. But I think that there might be, and I could be wrong, confusion about what do I take back to the VA. And we've got 5,000, if I'm not mistaken, roughly, VA employees within our metro area. So if we're out looking for 10 volunteers to support an event one Thursday night out of the summer, I would think we could communicate that as a complete volunteer organization, nonprofit 501c3, and get support from the VA to say, sure, you can communicate that throughout our organizations. I don't know what that mechanism is, but we do get pushback that no, we can't, we're not, our communications managers or whatever don't allow us to communicate out what we're doing to staff, and then ask for something in return as far as like citizen volunteer time. So those are some things that I think would allow us to really exponentially grow our engagement and our awareness and get federal and state participation. Having said all that, I think we're making great progress, and I love having at our network meetings the federal government, state government, and our business partners, our faith community. We're trying to get some real nice cross sections of the school communities. We have JROTC instructors who are excellent volunteers on our network because they can get the word out to all the other JROTC instructors at the schools, so that when we have initiatives or things or opportunities for young people to get involved, that word can get out very quickly. So that's one, quick thing that we've learned and is a great best practice for us. And I hope I'm not way off bounds or whatnot.
No,
that's how I'll start my part of the conversation.
No, that's good information, but I definitely want to defer to the phone to see if any, because so Minneapolis VA, do we have anyone on the call or WebEx from the Minneapolis VA healthcare system that can maybe speak to?
I'm here from the regional office.
Okay,
VA regional office.
good. So we can hear at least from the VBA side. Can you think of any piece or any feedback regarding, I guess, getting the word out to the VBA side of the house, the regional office?
I think that's something that I think that we can do. Obviously, to work with our my director to do that. I think you bring up a important point with you have to make the distinction sometimes that this is not, you're not acting as an official emissary for the VA. You're going out as just a volunteer. So we've done that in the past where we've solicited for volunteers for different organizations that need their help. So.
Thank you.
Rhonda, can you clarify something? This is so confusing to me. If the VA is wanting the engagement, and they want a seat at the table of these community groups, community veteran engagement boards, why can't they serve in their role as a VA member when involved with those community, that to me needs to be really clearly understood and defined from at the very top level, because it seems like that's, you're saying you want something, and then you're saying it can't happen because of a conflict of interest. I just don't understand.
So 2 points to note, and I will tell you, part of the reason why, and I can't speak for Secretary McDonald, but I do know that part of the intent of establishing the Community Veteran Engagement Board was deliberately for it to be a community-driven initiative. And that was on purpose, and part of the reason, again, not speaking for him, but it was probably because of the restrictions on the VA. And sometimes, those of us within the VA, we'll joke and say, or at least even outside the VA, people say, well, it'll take an act of Congress. Well, when you work for the VA, it literally takes an act of Congress in order for us to get something done. And so we do have restrictions. We can't fundraise. We can't, advocate for a group over another. So that, and definitely, I by no means admit to or say that I'm the subject matter expert on all of that. I do know that there are some restrictions, and a lot of our, when we do partner, for example, you heard about our community partners earlier, we had to have a formalized MOU with those groups at the national level to allow, to delineate, here's our role, here's their role. So it does get a little tricky doing certain things. We can't promote one group over another, if you will. So having the seat at the table means that now there's someone driving that process, but we are going to lend a hand to support as we are able. And so hopefully that clarifies some of that. But if there are specific issues, then you definitely want to work with that local facility, work with the point of contact within the Veteran Experience Office to clarify, okay, this is a yes or this is a no. But we do, there are times when we're asked to do certain things and we have to take it to our the Office of General Counsel, which is our team of attorneys, to find out, okay, can we legally and ethically do this? So it just kind of, I guess the short answer is it depends on what exactly the activity is. Interesting.
That helps. No, that's super helpful. I mean, it's super clarifying. So the VA wants these community relationships and wants to be able to be at the table to hear what's being said. But the VA is, I heard what kind of clicked there was you're just going to be able to support as you are able. And there is kind of a true kind of line that you can't cross, like you said, with fundraising and things like that. So it's being at the table so you can hear and get the feedback and maybe bring information for information sharing, but truly not leading and for sure not leading because you're only supporting as able. Right?
Correct. And from my understanding that all of the organizations that are at the table take that same stance. There are some that are able to provide services and funds, and then there's others that, I'm here for information sharing. So it really varies across the board. The intent, again, going back to our deputy, Chris Olson's presentation about the CVEB, remember, it's about the collaboration. So it's bringing all these groups together, and now everyone's playing their part. They're doing what they can within their lane. So, for example, and the reason why the VA needs to partner is because we're not the end-all, be-all. We can't provide, just because we partner with CVEB doesn't change, legislatively what we're able to provide to veterans. So we still have our parameters. However, now if there are gaps, because we know that not every veteran qualifies for VA health care and services and benefits. So, but because we're partnering with these partners that do, now when those veterans approach us, we're able to say, I don't provide that, but here's someone who can. Here's an organization who can assist.
So I'm taking a best practice out of this potentially, and tell me if I'm wrong, but as a state and national coordinator here for the state of Minnesota, we could potentially be asking someone within the Veteran Experience Office to have a quarterly or bi-annual phone call, and we could invite all of our Beyond the Yellow Ribbon communities, because we have 97. You can't help facilitate 97 CVEBs. One in each community of where a VA is what the capacity is what it seems like. But if we had an annual call or whatever it is, where they could then connect in and have that relationship open up within that office, that way if they had needs, then Yeah, Gil, would you like to talk?
Yeah.
I would, actually. Hey.
By way of
hi,
introduction, Gil Stubbs.
It took a while to figure out, we've got this really handy pad thing over here, my name is Gil Stubbs, and I'm hearing a lot of what you're saying, and I wanted to let you know that, the plan is that the first week of August, I will be there to work with you and hopefully have some face-to-face meetings and better understand what your needs are, and I do believe that I can help with some of the things that I'm hearing. We will be reaching out, I will be reaching out as soon as I get approval for that trip, which is already in the system, and again, I think that as we develop our relationship with me being one of your newer field consultants, that we can work together to overcome some of these things that you may perceive as barriers that are probably real barriers. And I also believe that right now I will start working on some of the VA issues that you have. If there's communication that's not happening, that is something I can help you resolve. So again, just please keep in mind, I do plan on being there the first week of August and meeting with most of you. And I look forward to that face-to-face conversation about what you need from me or our organization, and how I can help you better, move forward with your effort and ours as well. So, look forward to that.
Thank you, Gil.
Our field consultants, do they work within the Veteran Experience Office?
So, so field consultant is the term that, under the previous model, the Veteran Experience Office had field consultants and relationship managers that were strategically placed throughout the nation. I think there's approximately 80 of us throughout the nation that were supporting the local facilities across the 3 administrations, but also supporting community engagement. So under this new model, as Chris mentioned earlier, we now divide it into project teams. So that title field consultant will go away as far as official capacity, but the function is still the same as far as us being, having that face-to-face, being here on the front line with you all.
I really appreciate it. I know that this is a springboard meeting and we're not here to solve all of these issues, but at the same time, having the ability to have all these people on one call or in one room, I'm just going to take advantage of it just a little bit, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, we appreciate the comments, and Gil will definitely connect with you after today and begin to continue that dialogue.
Fantastic.
Hey, Veronica, sorry.
I'm with Score, Minnesota, so I'm the state guy. If you don't know about who Score is, look it up on the internet. It started here 54 years ago. We do a lot of work with vets, specifically within our area of focus, which is basically small business startups. That said, we're connected with the Service Provider Network and 2 other groups that the VA sponsors for employment and for businesses that are looking for employment. There's some groups here running in parallel to what you guys are trying to do that you don't connect with. Service Provider Network happened because Allison and a couple of others sat back and said, we're working across purposes here. She's got 70 active members, 240 groups that signed up that have various and sundry interests in helping vets. Everything from healthcare things that an NGO can do to employment, to everything in between. We just need to coordinate that because, Beyond the Yellow Ribbon does great stuff, and it's huge communities. But it's this part. They do this part. Here's all the rest of them. And if you're going to do these community boards, you need to reach out to all of us. There's 370,000 vets in the state of Minnesota. Half of them are since Vietnam, which means I'm somewhere back in the Civil War, based on my kids. And there's 30,000 women vets since 2001 just in this state. And trying to find them and reach them is a heck of a challenge. We need to work better to do that. Because the VA system here would tell you that there is a relatively fractional number that has signed up for health care benefits and uses the system. Fractional is a nice way of putting it. How are we going to reach all these people and say, hey, we're part of your family? So when Gil comes out in August, it'd probably be prudent for all of us to get together and talk because we're basically running in parallel. A lot of resources.
I'll put up, Gil, August 15th is when they're all getting together, so I will send you an email, mark your calendar. That would be the ideal time to come. But, you know, something that jumps out to me too, that I'd love for you guys to talk about too, is, you know, the St. Cloud community is doing a great job because they've got a VA there, right? And then we've got some VA participation here with our St. Paul Yellow Ribbon because we've got a VA here. But, you know, a lot of the issues with our military and veteran community, and I will say military and veteran community because that's a big issue too in the state of Minnesota, is that the geographically dispersed are really being left behind. And I was curious if you could talk to best practices that the VA is looking at for places where you don't have a hospital. You know, that geographic disbursement, is there a strategy or are there best practices that can be shared about how you guys are attacking that in states geographically dispersed and get away from that?
Hi, Veronica. This is Megan in Cleveland. I'd love to have our CVEB touch on some of that a little bit.
Yeah, good.
So, before I introduce Tim Oldani, who's one of our board members, to talk about the Veterans Experience Action Center that we do here, I just want to talk a little bit about Northeast Ohio. And in Northeast Ohio, what we found when we started to form a community veterans engagement board here was that we have a ton of organizations that are already doing great work. So kind of it sounds similar to this area. You know, we have great organizations that are focused on a certain type of veteran or that are focused on a need of veterans or are focused on a scale or a county or an area, and we really needed to find a way to kind of bring all of them together and work together. And that has been one of the lead focuses of the Northeast Ohio Veterans Community Task Force. And so I'm going to let Tim Oldani talk a little bit about the Veterans Experience Action Center, which is one of their main outreach events that they do each year. And it's something that we didn't necessarily just create on our own. It's something that we used from a great example of Cajun Como down in North Carolina, and something that those offices and communities had come together to do in North Carolina, but that we took and made fit for Northeast Ohio. And I know that there's a couple of other community veteran engagement boards from Ohio that are on the line, and we are in talks, this board, working with those other boards about ways that maybe we can make that work in those communities. And when you talk about rural communities, one of the ways that we're doing that is to work through a telepresence to see how we can make those people and those minds and those dollars stretch across rural areas of Ohio where maybe we don't have a regional office for benefits or we don't have a hospital right there. And this format, what Tim's going to talk about, really touches on veterans who aren't necessarily technologically savvy and aren't able to just hop onto e-benefits or hop onto a system to do their claim and understand that and really need a little bit of an extra push. And, you know, everyone in this room and through our board wholeheartedly believes in this process. And so, again, a shout out to the folks in North Carolina and Cajun for sharing this with us, and then for all of our partners in Ohio for allowing us to adapt this into something that really works for our community and truly we believe is a best practice here. So without any further comment, Tim Oldani is going to talk a little bit about the Veterans Experience Action Center.
Thank you, Megan. Hi, Tim Oldani. I work for the VA's Vet Center program. So as Megan was touching on, the Veterans Experience Action Center is like just a giant conglomerate or event that really comprises of all the main VA components when you look at VHA, VBA, and MCA, as well as a lot of the community offices, county, state, federal, city, all included, and other NGOs. So essentially, it's all hands on deck. We bring the VHA, we bring the VBA. The VBA is kind of like, they're the poster child for it. They do the main effort because they bring like 30-plus people from the regional office. For this specific event we're doing in August, we did one last year, very successful. There was 522 verified veterans that came through, and that's veterans that we can say we engaged, we got their information, we've identified them, we know we helped them. If you want to just tabulate that up further and kind of take the iris out a little more, there was probably 1,000-plus veterans and maybe closer to 2,000 people total that came through over the course of 3 days. But this August, VBA being the main effort, they're going to pull from other parts of the state to bring some of their VBA counterparts up to give them exposure to this event. And that really shows a big push from VA in their side of the house that, hey, we want to bring people from Dayton, from Cincinnati, who work for VBA in those satellite offices and give them exposure to this event up here in Northeast Ohio. And that's really props to them for doing that. That shows they're willing to reach and bring assets in, because a lot of the different states that have, they deal with the dispersion. You're stressed out. You can't just have everybody right there in a centralized location, close to a VBA regional office, close to a VA medical center. So our VBA was reaching out to show, hey, we're going to do this, get you trained up on it, and then disperse it. So we also have the VHA really involved. The VHA comes and they actually bring providers out to the field. So if a veteran or service member comes and they've never enrolled in healthcare, they can come there, go with the enrollment and eligibility team, get plugged in, signed up, but they don't walk away after that. They will actually engage a provider out in the field, meaning a VA provider will come, do a comprehensive wellness exam, kind of like a short physical, and that veteran walks away having their first appointment and locked into their health care. And then we bring a lot of the other, different services like the county. They do their veteran ID cards. Now that's a state, I think even a federal initiative now that just got started. So we have the ID cards on site, take their picture, print it out, and kind of give that to them right there. It's really a good, it's a good force for the entire community, showing that everyone's coming together. So it's not like the VA's pushing this. It's not like a county office or the state Department of Veteran Services pushing it. This is a response of the whole community, everyone working together. Not a single one of us owns it except for the community. So it's really just a staple of what Northeast Ohio is doing for their veterans, instead of what just the VA in Northeast Ohio or what the county service office or what this particular private organization is doing. It's what we're all doing. And we've leveraged really the power that the Community Veterans Engagement Board really supplies the community by letting that board be the one that pushes it. So you've got equal voice among all the parts that participate, whether it be the County Veteran Service Office, the State Department of Veteran Services, the VA, VHA, VBA, NCA, or the Vet Center program. So not one person pushes it. We all have an equal voice in planning, and we work well together. So it's easy to look at a lot of the dispersed or disenfranchised communities and say, why aren't you doing anything, or we're not a part. But it really starts when the community owns it as a community. And I think what we focused on is the community owning it as a community, and I think that's why it's done quite well. We're really excited about the one coming up in August. It's on August 9th, 10th, and 11th. And we're going to do it at the same location. We're doing it at a community college here local that has a pretty good veterans initiative themselves. So if anyone has questions, we'd be willing to go deeper into any of the different paradigms of that. But we're all ears if anyone has any questions on that.
And what is the name of that event again?
The Veterans Experience Action Center.
And again, a note on that, we took this as an example of a best practice from North Carolina, and we shaped it into something that worked for us. And because of their kindness of walking us through it, we've walked a couple of other states through this as well, that they call into some of our planning calls. So like I said, the CVEB is happy to work with other community engagement boards or other entities in other states to help kind of share those best practices. And that's why, events like this are so important, so that we can make sure that we are all communicating with each other. One of the conversations that happened in this room while we were, listening in and collaborating and talking was how we love what one of the other boards are doing, and it's something that we'd like to maybe start seeing happen in Northeast Ohio. And we will absolutely reach out to that board and ask them some questions and ask them for some assistance to maybe shape that and put it together. So we're happy, this board's happy to answer anyone's questions and chat about that and use and share best practices for sure.
So I would love to hear those. My question would be, and I'm thinking about this geographically, so you're talking about Northeast Ohio. What about the other three quadrants in Ohio? Do they have similar CVEBs as you, and are they having the same kind of scenario play out?
So as we mentioned, in Ohio, we're focused on Northeast Ohio. This year is going to be our second Veterans Experience Action Center. Our regional office, that's based out of Cleveland, Ohio, which is in Northeast Ohio and covers the whole state, is working with the other community veterans engagement boards. So we have one in Dayton, Ohio, and one in Cincinnati, Ohio. And they've started initial talks with them to see if this is something that maybe they'd be interested in doing. And to do that, as Tim mentioned, they're looking at out-based folks that are located in those areas, and then also a heavy potential telepresence. So what is it that we can do through, either utilizing community-based outpatient clinics from the VA Medical Center, maybe even some of our vet centers? What can we do with some of our telehealth facilities in VA facilities and in the community to help work with our benefits office to try to make that a possibility in areas where the regional office may or may not exist. And then the same thing also applies if we do end up going to an area where there is not another medical center. So for us in Ohio right now, our 2 other community engagement boards are in areas where there are medical centers. Some of those, I know we have a few of those folks on the line, so I don't want to speak for them if they'd like to chime in. They're welcome to. But some of them have outreach events already that they are doing, and we're kind of looking to maybe grow and add a little bit of what the Veterans Experience Action Center is into that as well. And so, it's a constant collaboration not only among VA entities, but among the community engagement boards with the other boards as well.
And I think that that is a good example of a best practice in that you're tailoring it towards the needs of that local community. And to go back to your question or your comment, it really depends on the needs of that community and the dynamics of that community. But at least today, we're getting the conversation started so that there will be that better outreach. And we saw on the CVEB task force, so out of 142 CVEBs now, there were 30 selected to represent all 142 of you. And their number one was what? Outreach. We acknowledge that is a need to reach out to veterans so that they're aware of their benefits, their entitlements, there's the services that are available to them. That is a huge need, and especially in those rural areas. So again, no one entity can do it alone. It will take us collaborating and coming to the table together. Did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to, as a point of clarification, the Minnesota Beyond Yellow Ribbon are not just veterans. We are service members and their families and veterans. So from pre-deployment, deployment, reintegration, 30, 60, 90, and veterans. So getting back to your point about what are the needs of our community, they were started in, like Tiffany said, we have 97 of them right now that have different shapes and forms, from community to regional to county to also business, yellow ribbons. And they were started because Minnesota does not have a military installation at all. So all of our service members, the thousands that we have, when they're gone, whether deployed or they're reintegrating back, their families need assistance. And then again, the veterans too. So we're trying to be all-encompassing, and that's why the CBSO and MACV and the Legions and our banks and our higher education all come to our meetings or whenever they can, but that we're all networked through email and text messaging and such too, so that we can really encompass everybody. And we're purple. Some people, I think it got out there for a while that our Beyond Yellow Ribbons were just National Guard, Army and Reserve. That was how they started at first, but we're purple. We're all branches of the military again, just so that people are aware of the service member through the veteran. Thank you.
Hey, Veronica, we got a question or comment in Milwaukee.
Yes.
Can you hear me? This is Connie Walker from Madison.
Hi, Connie.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Well,
nice to have a face with the name.
We had a very good meeting last night at the Madison VA Hospital, and Gil and Carmen were there, and were terrific in the outreach with the group that we had. And we're brand new at this, by the way, in Madison. So I'm learning a lot and have been very quiet, but I think the questions that I've had have been answered by the process of the discussion. But a couple of things I wanted to mention. The diversity in terms of the membership across the group, I think, is really important, and I really appreciate what was just sent about bringing in finance and bringing in education institutions. I'll go to my grave thinking from past experience as an advocate since 2005 that the more we leverage educational leaders in our communities to help us do this outreach, the better success that we'll have. My question and my comments specifically go back just a little bit to the group in Northeast Ohio that was speaking. I'd be very interested, and I know that Gil can help us facilitate this connection, to learn more about that event on August 9th, 10th, and 11th. That sounds very valuable It's not an approach I've seen before, and I've seen various approaches over the years. So if you can facilitate a communication with a specific person in that group, that would be very helpful to me. In starting a new organization, and I have some familiarity with what's happening in Wisconsin writ large, and I think another point that was made was that there's a lot going on that we don't necessarily communicate well to each other or connect well. The example I would use would be a group in Appleton, Wisconsin, which is in rural central Wisconsin, and the work that, what's the name of that group again, Jill?
Fox Valley Veterans Council?
Fox Valley Veterans Council. I hope to meet the people that are in charge of that soon and let them know what we're getting to ramp up with in Madison. So lessons learned about how to improve that communication, I'm wide open to that. I appreciate very much the help that this dialogue and this discussion gives to a group of folks who are committed to beginning this. Madison VA Hospital is very invested in this. It was nice to hear that the VA regional office in Minneapolis or Minnesota is online. Based on past experience with the VBA in 3 different VEROs, I would say that it can be hard to get VBA to come on board. So anything that can get them to be an active presence. The question I would have is, somebody help me find a rep, and I know that falls to you, Gil, in Madison that I can count on from that VBA side of the house to participate. We really need to have that, and sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to bring to that trough to drink from. You know, in my opinion, it's hard for VHA and VBA themselves to communicate sometimes. So this, thank you very much. I was trying to be polite, but yeah, they don't communicate well. So the more that you guys can do at the national level to make sure that it's understood how important VBA's presence is in this, the better, I think. So thanks for an opportunity to comment. This is a valuable forum, and I appreciate the chance to be here.
Thank you, Connie. I do have a couple comments based on your observations. One, I want to put a plug in for Iowa because that's where I was stationed as a field consultant for a few years prior to moving to Tennessee. And Iowa itself was a best practice, the Iowa CVEB. We have 2 healthcare systems in the state, a regional office and a national cemetery. And at every meeting, those 4 directors were there. They had a seat at the table. They were collaborating right along with the rest of the community members. And when they left, if there was an issue, if one had an issue, they picked up the phone and called the other. So huge shout out to Iowa. But I acknowledge that that may not be occurring in every area of the country, but there are some places where it is working. And again, that's our goal. That's what we should be striving for.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Does the Veterans Experience Office communicate kind of the desire that those directors, I mean, is there pressure from that office, I mean, as much as you can have, to say that this is really important, and then, I mean, in that capacity, like, how do the communities then align to help so that they can engage? So, like, for example, you know, St. Paul being close enough, you know, how do they reach out and say, you know, we want to, you know, meet so that you can come to our meetings, what, you know, how do we partner with you, and then same thing in St. Cloud, like, and then for you guys, if you guys have your meetings quarterly up in Duluth, you know, there's more of that, you know, again, maybe it's not the goal to have a ton of CVEBs, because if you have too many CVEBs, you stretch those people too thin. But if you can coordinate regionally or something and then have kind of a series, I'm just curious about the strategy of engaging those directors and how the Experience Office can help.
And like the Superior Clinic isn't going to go all the way down to Madison. They're going to come to Duluth, and we're going to coordinate up there. They're northern. So I think you're right. A regional one makes sense.
And so, to that point, it does depend on the needs of the local community. So I definitely can't give a blanket answer to that. But I will say that our role within the Veteran Experience Office is to have those individuals that are there to support and to start that dialogue, again, across the 3 administrations. It's not a mandate, but when I was in the Midwest, so when I was in Iowa, I supported 5 states, so North Dakota, South Dakota, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Minnesota, along with Iowa. And I met with several of the directors. I didn't get feedback from one saying, no, we don't want to be engaged with the community. What I heard instead was the flip side, that there are some challenges. There's staffing shortages, there's resources, having to travel. So again, the dialogue at least needs to be started to find out what can we do. And going back to Connie's point about, who's her person there in Madison. There may not be a person physically there in Madison. But now that I've moved to Tennessee, for example, I'm working with the regional office there. They are, I would say, 3 hours away from one of the CVEBs. They're not going to be able to send an individual to those meetings. But what they're going to do is they've set times where they will call into those meetings. They're going to know what questions the community's having, what current concerns, what issues, and then they'll be able to answer them and address those issues. So again, it's thinking of those creative ways in light of the limitations that some of these local VA facilities have. So I definitely want to turn the table over to Duluth, which also has the yellow ribbon, is in the yellow ribbon network. So I want to give Jennifer an opportunity to share what you have to share.
So we started out as an ISFAC in 2008, but we found the closest one was at Fort McCoy in Wisconsin. So we would drive from Duluth down to Fort McCoy.
Which is what distance?
It's 4 hours, 4.5 hours, just to get to a base, because we don't have anything. So they had a wonderful community model. They would have every resource that you could think of in their whole area come to their meetings. So that's what we did. We sent out letters to anybody we felt would have hands-on to a veteran or military family and invited them to the meeting. And I think our first meeting, we had 60 people there that were all interested in helping military and veterans and families. Then we went to Beyond the Yellow Ribbon model that, it was pretty equal to what we were already doing, so we didn't have to reinvent anything. But they gave us more of a direction. They wanted us to fill out, I don't know, is it quarterly? Annually? What we're doing for the community, how we're helping, struggles that we're seeing. So we have some kind of a way to figure out if we need to grow more or if we're doing enough or, we're never doing enough. But that model gave us direction. So now, then after that, we went to joining community forces. So that, added 3 legs to the stool. And now we're not changing anything. We're just adding with the VA to include everybody that we can in a 150-mile radius that has any input to helping military and families and veterans. So I don't think we don't know how far we need to go. I mean, obviously, yes, we need more of an input with the VA, but we always have VA representatives at the table. We have an OEF outreach person that is at every event that 2 of them now that are, anything we've ever asked them to go to. But are there issues because we're so geographically dispersed? Yes. We have people up by the Canadian border that just are starting to get into a VA system. One located up there now. So our goal was to have less oversight and more inclusion. So we didn't really want to have to answer to anybody as a group, but it's nice to have direction and know what our goals are. That's why I love the Cleveland model, because we've never asked we have our goals and we have a purpose, but we've never measured it. We have no metrics. So that's going to be, I think, our next step, is to find out as a group what are our most important Because I see in years, you know, like fitness was very low, well, our community has really gotten into veteran and fitness. So I'm wondering, where would that fall? So, I've learned a lot.
Just as a little side note, I did lose internet connection, so I am logging back in. But Megan or Gil, if you could please check the chat box to see if we have any questions. Any questions have come in for the CVEB.
Hi, Veronica. Yep, there's one question in here that came through from Dustin Schultz, and it says, is there any way that the CVEBs or Veterans Experience Office can not only assist these support systems, but also hold organizations accountable for their work, resource allocation, impact for veterans? Grants and other resources for veteran organizations are limited, and some organizations may be more deserving and relevant than others. And he is from the La Crosse, Wisconsin, affiliated with La Crosse CDSO, so the county, and the La Crosse Area Veterans Mentor Program, and La Crosse Veterans Court and Western Technical College, VMC.
So it sounds, and what was his name again?
Dustin.
Okay, Dustin, so definitely chime back in if I have you way off base here, and I'm going to open the floor to my participants here, but it sounds as though you're asking as far as improved funding opportunities. I also heard something about accountability, how we can hold one another accountable. I do want to point out that just to clarify, the Veteran Experience Office does not have oversight of these boards. We don't hold the boards accountable. These are autonomous boards. Again, the VA has a seat at the table, and we're there as support for them. So you're not reporting to us. I just want to clarify that because I do know that previously when I met with some co-chairs, that was a concern of theirs, that, you know, the VA was trying to come in and take over, and that's not the intent at all. So I just want to throw that out there. But as a board, hopefully the board members are holding one another accountable because in order to meet their mission, as a board, you need to do so. But I definitely want to...
I wanted to touch on that really quickly, too.
Yeah.
Dustin, I would definitely say that that's a huge question among the boards. Some boards do that really well. Some are still struggling with that, and some are constantly sharing between themselves best practices. And that is kind of what the focus of that AWP task force, the America's Warrior Partnership Task Force that we heard Jim Lorraine present on earlier, that was one of their, main kind of things. How do we, or do we? Is that something we even want to do? Do we want to hold ourselves accountable as boards? Do we want to compare, contrast with other boards? Is that something we even want to get into? And if so, how do we do that, and what does that look like? And so I think that that'll be a very, we're really lucky that with that America's Warrior Partnership Task Force, the CVEB Task Force, all of the CVEBs that are participating in that task force come from varying backgrounds. So we have some that have been around for a long time, some that are brand new, some from big communities, some from rural communities, small cities, big cities, to kind of try to get across the grain representation of maybe what might work. And that's kind of something that they have been talking a lot about in that task force. So definitely more to come from that discussion. And then my second thing that I would just like to mention is that's a very, very valuable resource that here in Northeast Ohio, we found we like to steal from other CVEBs that do it well. So that was, part of the conversation. Michigan, the Veterans Community Action Teams in Michigan are all connected. There's 10 of them that cover the state of Michigan. They're all connected, and they work really well together, and they are kind of connected through the state level Department of Veterans Affairs and really have a sense of accountability that I haven't seen in every CVEB that I have had the ability to listen in on and be a part of. And so that's something that Northeast Ohio is at least looking to possibly steal from them as a best practice as well.
So here in the state of Minnesota with Beyond the Yellow Ribbon, this program has been going on for
Is anybody there?
Yeah, we can hear you in Cleveland. I think we just lost the main room there, unfortunately.
Hey, Megan, this is Tony. I thought that was only me. I'm driving through some mountains in Virginia, and everything got really quiet suddenly.
Oh, nope, Tony. It was everybody. I think we all got the *6 mute, and we all need the *6 to unmute ourselves, hopefully.
It's Jim Watsky. I'm back on.
Hi, Jim. I think we're still troubleshooting for Veronica and team there in Minnesota.
This is Darcella Craven out of St. Louis. We're here just listening.
Excellent. Thank you so much.